Hey folks, this is Kelani. So as with any new raid tier, we're going to be drooling over all the new powerful gear, set bonuses, and of course trinkets coming in Antorus the Burning Throne. Trinkets are always one of the most exciting pieces of loot, especially in new raids, because they're the items which usually do all the cool stuff. They can be incredibly powerful for a variety of classes, for a variety of reasons, but there's something to be said for how special end of expansion raid tier trinkets usually are, and Legion and Antorus the Burning Throne are no exception. The trinkets I want to talk about are the ones which drop from the last boss in the new raid, Argus the Unmaker. All 6 of these trinkets are from the last boss, and all 6 seem to be incredibly powerful. They also have a rather unique effect, which we hadn't fully understood until now, so let's talk about how 6 crazy trinkets from the last boss of the next raid might cause you a few headaches. Let's have a look at the trinkets first. There's 6 trinkets and they're named after the titans we had assumed were long gone. We have Agrimar's Conviction, a tank trinket with your primary stat and an equip effect. Taking damage has a chance to increase your armor for 15 seconds. When empowered by the Pantheon, and again I'll clear up exactly what that means in a minute, your maximum health is increased by 2 million for 15 seconds and you're also healed to full health. Pretty crazy effect there, though inherently random and potentially worthless if it procs at the wrong time. We have Amanthal's Vision, which is kind of a Arcano Crystal 2.0 in that it increases all of your secondary stats. Take note that the total stats this trinket provides are actually lower than an equivalent item level Arcano Crystal, but Amanthal's Vision comes with some extra bonuses. Your spells and abilities have a chance to increase your speed, avoidance and leech for 12 seconds. That's just a really weird choice. I don't see anyone actively wanting that proc, but I guess any bonus is better than no bonus, and when empowered by the Pantheon, the trinket increases your primary stat for 15 seconds. That's a pretty hefty proc, so that might be the main reason this trinket is taken over an Arcano, though I imagine if an Arcano Crystal is that good for your class, you might just equip both if you have access to both. We have Ionar's Passion, a healing trinket with intellect and an equip. Your healing effects have a chance to grow an emerald blossom nearby, which heals a random injured ally every 2 seconds, and the blossom lasts for 14 seconds. While empowered, your next 6 direct healing spells also apply a shield to the targets. There's also Golgonoth's Vitality, an agility trinket which has an equip effect that sometimes spawns a small AoE at your target's location, dealing damage to any enemies within 6 yards for 8 seconds. When empowered, your auto attacks also pulse in a little AoE around your targets, and that lasts for 15 seconds. Khaz'goroth's Courage is a strength trinket which also has a chance to cause your auto attacks to deal extra damage, though instead of an AoE it's single target, and when you become empowered your highest secondary stat is increased for 15 seconds. A little strange that both agility and strength works around increasing auto attack damage, but one is single target and the other one is AoE. I guess we'll have to see how the encounters are in Antorus before we decide which is more ideal. And finally we have Norgannon's Prowess, a spellcaster trinket which has mastery and an equip effect. Damaging spells have a chance to increase intellect for 18 seconds. That's maybe one of the better procs, but when you become empowered, your next 6 spells deal a bit of extra damage as well. Alright, so that's the actual trinkets out of the way. There's some good ones in there. Some of them have stronger effects than others for sure, and a lot of their new power resides in the special empowered by the Pantheon effects. But here's the kicker. To gain that empowerment effect, you have to have at least one of every trinket in your raid. It makes sense when you think about it. Each of these trinkets represents one of the Pantheon. You need all representatives to complete the Pantheon and thus gain the empowerment of the Pantheon. So each trinket is required to get the most out of any of the trinkets. That has a few implications. First, you can't ever gain the full benefit of these trinkets in solo play or in dungeons. You have a max of 5 players in the dungeons and there's 6 trinkets. They're also unique equipped, so you're stuck to 5 at the very max. This also means that the more players you have in a raid with the trinkets, the better off you will be. It's an interesting mechanic and an interesting choice for the dev team to make, especially when you put all of the 6 trinkets on the last boss of the raid. That means every time you manage to full clear Antorus, you have a chance of increasing your raid-wide effectiveness quite dramatically. At first you won't have any of the trinkets, and then as you slowly accumulate them and finally reach one of each trinket, you suddenly have the chance to proc all of these crazy bonuses for your entire raid, as long as they have a trinket. I imagine when you get to that point you'll see a huge increase in raid-wide damage. The only problem I see with that is that if you get incredibly unlucky, you might not see one of each trinket for a very long time, but every kill after serves to increase the chances of those procs happening as long as you do manage to get those 6. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, I haven't explained how the proc actually works. So you notice that every trinket has an equip effect. None of them are on use, they're all random procs. Now when you get a proc for your trinket, it sends kind of an invisible buff to everyone else in your raid, which basically says, yo, trinket 1 is active. When any of the other trinkets proc for anyone else, they also get that invisible buff telling you that their trinket is active. To become empowered by the Pantheon, you need all 6 invisible buffs from the 6 different trinkets. That means you have to have every single trinket proc somewhere in your raid for the empowerment to trigger. When the empowerment triggers, it becomes active for everyone who has the trinket, even if their buff didn't contribute to the empowerment actually triggering. Now apparently these trinkets do have a decent proc rate on pull, so I'd expect to have a half reliable uptime on the empowerment as you start fights, but after that it's all about luck and the roll of the dice. If you have 5 trinkets active and one runs out just before the 6th one triggers, that's just tough luck. You have to have all 6 buffs active somewhere at the same time. That also means that as you increase your raid size, you're probably going to see a better uptime on those buffs, providing of course that the new players have their own trinkets and the 6 trinkets are spread out evenly, which might not be the case. If you don't happen to have an agility trinket user in your raid at all, no empowerments for you. No strength users? That's unfortunate. It's kind of a throwback to the Warlord's legendary ring where one of your huge power spikes is actually reliant on your entire raid, except this time you don't get to push a button to trigger the power spike, you need 6 random trinkets and 6 random procs to align, and then you also need 6 items instead of just 1. Again, it's an interesting idea. I actually really like how it looks on the surface. I'm just a little worried about the implications of how it's being implemented. But it also kind of serves as a time-gated nerf to the Antorus raid, which should definitely help with mythic raiding when we get there. Imagine you're struggling on a boss, but that week you got your 6th trinket. Suddenly you have the potential to just wreck the boss's face thanks to the huge power boost. It also encourages you to run a variety of classes in your raids, which might be something of an attempt to prevent class stacking in Antorus, which we did see a few problems with in the Tomb of Sargeras. I just imagine everyone and their grandmother trying to game the system for maximum advantage, which is fine I guess until it ends up with the pugs requiring specific trinkets or players having to run a trinket they don't like or don't want to use. It also means we kind of go back to bring the class or bring the trinket instead of bring the player, which could be very frustrating for some folk. What happens if the tank trinkets aren't proccing enough? Do you run a DPS with the tank trinket and make them stand in stuff so you get more procs? Will casters have to equip the lesser of the 2 trinkets just because they need the procs? What about group sizing? When everyone has their trinket down the line, increasing group size will yield more uptime on the empowerment buff. Suddenly smaller, close-knit guild groups are at a bit of a disadvantage. I can't help but think this will be Concordance of Legionfall on steroids. There's so many random buffs that can either line up or not, and if the difference between a 1% wipe is whether or not you got lucky with your procs, that's going to be such a bad feeling. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but it definitely seems like this could snowball into a major headache. I hope it doesn't. This is the kind of thing I wish the dev team would do more often, but they're probably scared about the ramifications of implementing elaborate trinkets or effects because they're too complicated or annoying to deal with when you try to game the system. It might end up a headache, but for now I'd like to see how things pan out. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you have any questions or queries, you can leave them down there as well. I'll get back to you as soon as possible, or hop on over to Discord. We have a server at discord.gg/Kelani, great place to come ask questions or just hang out. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.